Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Hello.
Pat. Oh, how was your weekend?
Um, my weekend was a little bit different than usual. This weekend I was a dad. Um,
What?
yeah, I know. That's what I did this weekend. I wore my dad hat, and I'm a man that wears many hats. I do many different things. I'm many different people throughout the year. I have many aliases that I go under. And this weekend, my wife was out of town, and it was I have joint custody of my daughter. It was my weekend with my daughter, and my son had a basketball tournament.
Oh yeah, so
So
you were like really dadding
I
it out.
I was straight up in dad mode all weekend long. There was no paranormal activity. There was no weird happenings. There was just me
Did you
and
wear socks with sandals?
no, but I did buy this like X-Men replica jacket off like Instagram.
Oh, okay.
And I wore
You're
that
that
the whole
dad.
time. Yeah, I was the fucking dressing like a superhero dad. No, it was all right. I the basketball tournament was in Aurora, which is about 45 minutes away. So spent like the whole weekend driving back and forth. He had one game Friday night, two games on Saturday. They lost all of them.
Oh,
And I don't listen, like I'm not an athlete. My son is already more of an athlete than I've ever been my whole entire life. So I appreciate him trying. He's actually one of the better players on the team. So there's no listen, like win or lose, I still love you. I am not one of those crazy parents that like gets angry when their kid loses at sports. However, my son's team like played those kind of parents, and I don't like seeing those people win.
yeah,
So it's like so much that it's not so much that I want, like, it's kind of demoralizing to sit there and watch your kid lose time after time again. But then, like, when you're sitting next to these assholes that are screaming at their kids to like beat your kid, like they're yelling instructions at them, like, cover the point, get in the basket, do this, be more aggressive. And it's like, okay, you're giving your kids instructions on how to beat my kids. Like, should I be yelling instructions at my kid on how to beat yours, or is that what we're doing? Are we like, I don't know. I hate it. That to me, like,
like don't worry about it. We'll take him back in the alley after the game.
yeah, fuck these little pricks. Like, and then I'm surrounded because this was like a tournament, so everyone traveled to the place that we were
Yeah,
playing. So like all of the other parents from my kids' school were like there, and we were all kind of in close proximity. And like I don't really talk to those people. One of the kids' moms is like really hot, and I get very uncomfortable around her. And me and my wife talked about this already, so I can talk about this in the air. But like whenever she talks to me, like I blush and I don't know what to say and I stammer and I turn into like a 14-year-old kid, like, and so that's awkward. And then there's this like other guy who he's one of the parents of one of the kids, and like he's at all the games that I'm at always, and his wife is like very rarely there, so he's usually there on his own. You would have thought like after a year and a half of this, me and this guy would have like become friends, and I just refuse to talk to him.
do you know his name?
No, I don't want to know his name. I know his kid's name. I don't talk to him. And if I see him, I just look at my phone, and I don't know why. Because I'm not like you know me, like I'm a friendly
Yeah,
person, but I just like don't. I'm just like I don't want you. People are all lame. I don't. And then the hot mom, you're too hot for me. You
yeah.
need to go eat a fucking calzone, come back or something. Like you were too goddess like. I don't know. So there was that, and then after the tournament, me and my daughter went and saw Megan together because my kid didn't want to, my son didn't want to.
What'd you
So
think about it?
I dug it. I thought it was pretty good. It was PG-13,
Hmm.
which I think I knew only because I had planned on taking my kids to it, and I saw that it was PG-13. It's not gory. There's very little blood. Um, it's very it's very Evil Dead like. Like there's a lot of it can be very wacky at times, and it's got a lot of the snap zooms. Like when Ash is in the shed and he's like making the chainsaw hand and it keeps zooming in on what he's doing.
Right.
It does that a lot. It's a lot more playful than I thought it would be, and it was a pretty good time. And talking about Evil Dead, the trailer for the new Evil Dead played before it, Evil Dead Rises,
Yeah, yeah,
and I got to say that kind of disappointed me a little bit because that wasn't as playful. And me and Daniel had a conversation about this on Y2K, but it's like I feel like there's two types of Evil Dead people. There's the people that really like the first Evil Dead, like the tree raping Evil Dead, and then there's people that, and this is the camp that I'm in, that like the really hammy Bruce Campbell, Three Stooges Evil Dead. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Okay.
And I like goofy, campy Evil Dead. And
Yeah.
this new Evil Dead movie looks very much like the original, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's, and all we're seeing is like what, like a minute trailer. Like we don't know. You don't know what the movie is.
Wait, hold on. You think it looks like the original in terms of being campy?
No, well, in terms of not being campy, like I would say the first Evil Dead movie is pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward horror.
I think it's
Um,
still pretty campy. I swear to God, if he's, I mean, Bruce Campbell falls into those shelves how many times? It's pretty ridiculous.
but not to the heights that the second and third one get.
Well, no, it just continues to get
Yeah, more and more
funnier and
ridiculous.
funnier. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and as far as the horrific factor of like a woman being raped by a tree, we get that in the first one. We never really reach those heights again in the second or third one. Um, the third one has him, like I said, doing like Three Stooges bits with the.
yeah.
It's like it's real goofy. He's got the hand crawling around and shit. Well, no, that's the second one. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I got off this Evil Dead tangent.
I like all of them. I'll say that I enjoy everything that the Evil Dead franchise has done. Everything.
Yeah,
With my ranking being honestly number one, Evil Dead 2.
right.
Number two is Army of Darkness for me.
See, this is all correct.
Number three is the first one,
Uh huh.
and then number four is the show, and then number five is the 2010 movie.
2013.
Oh,
Yeah, I
2013,
so
well,
the only thing that
but none of
da-
them are bad.
no, and I really did like the 2013 one, but I get what
Mhm.
you're saying. If you had to, what would you rank higher, the TV show or that 2013 movie? I would probably have to rank the TV show too because number one, Bruce Campbell, and number
Right.
two, that TV show had like one or two really good episodes every
Oh yeah.
season.
Oh yeah.
Like the one with the baby
Yeah.
was like fucking insane. I liked his dad. I liked his daughter.
Yeah.
Lee Majors, like that stuff was all great. I thought the chick was hot and Pedro was all right. Or what was his name? Was it Pedro?
I think it was Pedro on the show.
All right, I'm not.
He was great.
I don't
Pedro
know
and then the girl, and then Lucy Lawless was in it. Fucking.
Oh yeah, she was okay.
I mean, I like the show a lot. No, there were some moments, and it's like okay. And then what's his name? Ted Raimi was in it. As Chet. Chet was great. It had some really fucking ridiculous moments, but it also had some like genuinely horrifying moments, like when he has to fucking trip on ayahuasca to fight the one demon. it's it's kind of crazy, because that creature itself is like horrifying, but it's also Bruce Campbell tripping on ayahuasca, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I remember watching that because my mom had stars, and I would just go back to her. I would go to her house and like do laundry and hang
Check it
out
out.
once a week and watch
Yeah.
it. Um, I did really enjoy it. It was good.
It was good, and
Yeah.
I feel like people sleep on the show, and I'm like, don't, it's good, like, because I get it. You make a show out of a movie, and sometimes it didn't work out well. I guess I can't really think of any examples, but yeah, don't sleep
Well,
on
it
the
was
show.
also, I guess, my only complaint with the TV show was that it took them too long. It took them 3 seasons to kind of wind up where they started off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that they never have any reference towards the medieval stuff, right? And
no, not
then
at all. Yeah, that's not canon for some reason.
yeah, and then the third season ends with him going to the future, which was
Wow, spoiler alert, Pato.
oh fuck you if you haven't watched it. You know what? If you haven't watched Ash versus the Evil Dead, you're the reason there's no fucking season 4. So it's like
Yeah,
I'm not trying to
you
protect your
asshole.
feelings. You should have been watching this shit when it was on because we would have finally seen what happens when Ash goes to the future,
Yeah,
which is something they teased as far as back as the Japanese release of Army of
yeah,
Darkness.
you went to the future there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, oh,
which was
Anyway,
fun. That was a fun, for true fans, that was a fun little callback there. And
yeah,
they ended it, even though it did get canceled prematurely, I felt like they ended it just fine. Just
yeah,
fine. And I would have been happy if that's the way it ended, and that's that. I always want more Bruce Campbell.
right. I agree.
I
Criminally
respect
underused.
I respect that he is done playing Ash. I do. I mean, it makes me sad, but I get it. The man's not getting any younger.
Right.
I could take or leave this new Evil Dead. I have a feeling I will probably enjoy it just based off of what I've seen from the trailers, and because I know I liked the newer one. I did like it for what it was.
Yeah, I did
And
too.
it didn't have Ash. It didn't need Ash. It was good, so
Yeah.
that's my take on that.
I will say one more thing about Bruce Campbell. He played Elvis in Bubba Hotep,
Oh yeah.
and he was at some kind of movie thing. I don't know what it was. It might have been uh, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness,
Okay.
and some interviewer on the red carpet grabbed him and said, "Hey, have you seen the new Elvis movie? You played Elvis in Bubba Hotep. What do you think of this kid playing Elvis in this movie?" And he totally took a shit on the kid. I forget what the actor's name is, but he kind of made fun of him, like for his portrayal of Elvis.
Oh my
And
god.
I just thought that was so badass. Like, Bruce Campbell, who the fuck are you? But no, he was like, I did it first. Like,
But
yeah,
listen, he played a damn good Elvis.
he sure did.
That movie is, if you've never seen Bubba Hotep, now that's a movie.
Yes.
that's like, that's a movie. You guys should do that on my 2K movies.
Oh, Bubba Hotep, sure.
Yeah,
I think that
I'm
if
requesting
I
it.
if I if I win the Mega Millions tonight, I get whatever it is, 300 fucking $100 million.
Sure.
Um, I would fund Bubba Nosferatu, which was supposed to be the sequel to that.
Oh
Where
my god.
did you ever hear about that?
No.
It was supposed to be him, and it was a prequel, and it was him in the 70s with Paul Giamatti as Colonel Tom Parker, and they're fighting vampires by special order of Richard Nixon. So you know how we talked about in the Elvis episode how Nixon made Elvis de-aging or some shit, right?
Yeah.
And Elvis just wanted it so he could travel around with drugs on him. And but in the theory of the movie, it's like no, he was actually an agent for Nixon in the White House, and he fights vampires. Bubba Nosferatu. Look it up. It's one of like those famous never made sequels that
That needs to
everyone.
happen.
Yeah, they would definitely need. If I ever win the lotto, I will fucking give
And
them
I
all the
think
cash
Bruce
for
would
it.
do that.
Well, he's yeah. You could still probably de-age him a little bit,
Well, why would you de-age him? The whole point
because
of Bubba Hotep is they were in a nursing home. I
right.
guess
But it
it's
was a
for
prequel to that. It
Nixon.
was like this took
Yeah.
place in the 70s
True.
when he was 40 years old. Campbell's like 60 now, but he still looks good. I don't
He
know.
looks,
You can figure it
yeah.
out.
He could pass for 30 with the right
Suspension of
makeup.
disbelief. There's no fucking vampires either, and we're going to sign off
That's
on
true.
that. We could sign off on Bruce Campbell pretending to be 10, 15 years younger.
JFK isn't a black guy. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
That's true. Wow. Well, how do we
How
start talking about this? Oh yeah, you saw Megan.
how was your weekend? You had an exciting weekend.
Well, I did have an exciting weekend. So Friday I had a show. I was on the historically haunted vodcast. The guy that hosts that show, his name's Adam. He's freaking awesome. He goes around and he goes around to like these haunted places and stuff. But another thing that he does that's really neat is he's got like a bucket list of like going around to all these places where all these horror movies were filmed, and he's been fucking everywhere. Like he's been everywhere. It's really really neat actually. So he's a cool guy. Definitely check him out. I'll put a link somewhere for you guys to check him out. But I did the show with America's Sweetheart Ryan Tremblay and Jean Tuxbury Tucson. Jean, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. She works alongside Lauren Coleman at the International Cryptozoology Museum. Great lady. She does like big cats and things like that. And then you got, Ryan's Wendigo stuff. And then Saturday, I actually did a little bit of did some research, cracked open the old research file there. Um,
I
I went
think
and
you mean book, honey. I
no, no,
hate to
no, no,
say,
no, no,
I hate to
no,
see
no,
you struggle.
no, 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 no. I went to Anne's house. I got together with Anne, and the intention there was not to like do any work. Like I just wanted to, see Anne or whatever. But then we just couldn't help ourselves. We got into a rabbit hole. It's kickstarted something new all over again. I don't know. Maybe I'll share some details on the Patreon. So that would be fun if you want to look into that. So of course, you got to subscribe to find out. And then Sunday, I did another show. I'm going to be on the weekly Spooky this week, talking about actually like Michigan lore. So I have a really good friend. He runs this podcast, the Weekly Spooky. Typically, it's a collection of different scary stories, real or not. And I get to go on there and flex my folklore muscle about Michigan. So check that out. And then today I found out that I'm officially a published author. So
Yay!
that's where I need my soundboard. I could have done like
I told you we should have recorded the intro.
clapping.
We had, prior to recording this week's episode, we had a very boisterous, excited
Yeah, we gushed already.
exchange, yes, where we talked about how awesome this is, how happy I was for Asher's. And if you notice, that's why my energy level wasn't the same coming into the show. It's because I already shot my load.
Pat needs to
So
rest his eyes for a few minutes.
I need to recharge.
No, no, no. But in all honesty, I'm going to be in the Feminine Macabre Volume 5 alongside a bunch of other great people. But that should be coming out in this summer. So I'll let you guys know when and where. You can, purchase it online, or you can buy copies from me directly. If you see me at events and things like that, I will have them after it's released. So there's that. How
Yeah.
super exciting.
With Heather Mosier and Courtney Black, two guests that we've
Oh,
also
yeah.
had. Was there anyone else on there that we've had on the show? Those
Nobody
are the
that we've
two.
had on the show yet. Yeah.
Okay, those are the two that I recognized immediately, but I didn't know if maybe another one was snuck in there. But yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very cool. Um, I'll tease it a little bit. My article is titled "Trauma and the Paranormal," so and that's all you get. You have to buy the book to figure out the rest.
And I have read it, and it was not traumatic. It was actually a very good experience reading it.
Very very therapeutic to the trauma minded. No, it is interesting. It's a concept that I've worked on for a while. It's something that people have heard me talk about, but has never been put into a spot before. I want to know what you guys think when it comes out, when you read it. I definitely want to hear the reception. If it's something that is interesting to a good portion of the community, then I might put a lot more energy into this. It's been a heavy focus of my research for a long time, and um, I'm excited to put it out there and see what the peanut gallery has to say. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that's been my time. That's been my week.
Nice.
I don't have any news.
What?
I don't have any news.
I have one thing.
Oh, okay. You have one news.
Well, it's two pieces of news that fold into each other, and I'll just get started. So, I wanted to start off by talking about the fact that our podcast made the Paranormality Magazine's top 10.
Oh, that is news. Yeah.
Yeah, for the month of January, and 55% of our listeners polled think that riding on the crest of the success, I will be the first to accidentally leak a sex tape instead of Asher's, which, let me tell you, that tracks. I am photogenic, pervy, and a filmmaker. And yeah, people like me make a lot of sex tapes, so it's only a matter of time before one ends up in the wrong hands. But not too long after I made this joke on Twitter and I put out that Twitter poll, did I see something about a documentary that was released about Paris Hilton
Okay.
called This is Paris. Now, this documentary came out 2 years ago, but the article about it is making the rounds again this weekend because I guess there was a celebrity party in California. I think Kate Hudson's brother turned 35 or something, right? None of this means anything to anybody. But Paris Hilton and Britney Spears were photographed there together. and it brought up a lot of conspiracy theories, I guess, that are out there that Britney Spears still has not been freed and has been replaced by a body double. So let me just backtrack for a second here. First of all, this whole Paris Hilton thing. 2 years ago, Paris Hilton came out with a documentary called "This Is Paris," and in it, it talks about her upbringing and that she was basically kidnapped. She was a wild child, right? She had a lot of money, and at 17, her parents had her kidnapped to be taken to a boarding school, and she was sent to the Provo Canyon School in Utah. It's an establishment with a long history of abuse allegations, and a lot of people think that it is a MK Ultra style training facility. And some of the things that the school still exists today, and there's a actual disclaimer on their website trying to distance themselves from a lot of the claims that ex students have made. And some of the things that this school supposedly does to their clientele, which are all incredibly rich, incredibly prominent young celebrities. So it's like child actors, uh, kids of famous people. This isn't something that like Dr. Phil sends you to if your mom writes him a letter and says that she can't control you anymore, right? This is like creme de la creme boarding school. And in the documentary, what's it called again? This is Paris. She actually recounts all the stuff, the brainwashing stuff they did to her at this school, and they animate segments of it, which is
Huh.
really kind of weird and disturbing. She says that you're sitting in a chair all day long, looking at a wall, getting yelled or hit. Um, she says that I felt a lot of the people who worked there got off on torturing children and seeing them naked. They would prescribe everyone all these pills. I didn't even know what they were giving to me. I would just feel so tired and numb. Some people in the place were gone, like the lights are on and there's no one home. She was subjected to solitary confinement, like something out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They'd make people take off their clothes and go in there for like 20 hours. Someone was in the other room, straitjacket and screaming. I was freezing and starving. I was alone and scared. And all of the stuff that basically she outlines, either potentially unknowingly, like she doesn't even really know what she's saying. This is all taken from the origins and techniques of monarch mind control, which was like one of the documents that they MK Ultra used for like their experiments on people with acid back in the 50s and 60s and shit. So a lot of people saw this documentary and came away with this idea that like had she been programmed, like this is horrific behavior, and the documentary presents it as such. But people that knew a thing or two about a thing or two took it a step further and said, well, wait a minute, this actually sounds incredibly close to MK Ultra programming, right? So I wanted to bring that up to bring up the more recent thing, which is this theory that's going on around online, and this was covered on in Billboard magazine, Variety, Fox News. Okay, this story from this weekend was all over the place, and it was that her and Britney Spears were seen at this birthday were photographed, and so photographs appeared on social media of her and Britney at this party this weekend, and a lot of people think that these photos are fake,
Huh.
and they think that Paris Hilton is involved with this missing Britney Spears conspiracy that people think is happening, right? And I know you're not a big celebrity follower, and I'm really not either. But like this stuff all caught my interest, right? So have you were you paying attention to like the Free Britney thing that
Not
was
really. I mean, I kind of know about it, but not really.
right? So there was a conservatorship with her dad where he basically had control over her finances and her image and everything. And the idea at the time was that they were trying to protect her from herself. She had children, and she had a brand that was, she had a responsibility to provide for the kids, and she had a brand that was worth X number of million of, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And if it wasn't handled correctly, she could potentially tank her brand and lose all value. Now she's a person though, right? So it's kind of weird to talk about a person in these abstract terms, to think about a person in regards to their brand value, okay? But if you were going through temporary mental instability and you were making an ass out of yourself in the press and you were to tarnish your brand enough that you wouldn't be able to earn money in the future, that could adversely affect your children. So the argument that the father made to the courts, and originally the courts agreed with it before this whole Free Britney thing started, was that she needed to be protected from herself, right? And that she's going through a rough time right now. We're working on it. We have her in therapy. We're trying things with medication, but she has the ability to make money. She needs to stay on track. She needs to lead a focused life and do these shows in Vegas and all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. Well, eventually there was some documentaries that hit Netflix. The press got involved. The people rose up and they started this whole Free Britney movement that resulted in Britney Spears, the thing that her dad had the
Conservatorship.
over her being dissolved, she was allowed to do what she wanted. Well, what did she do? Started posting these wacky ass Instagram videos,
Yeah.
and then she ran off and married some random dude. Right? Basically, everything her dad was trying to protect her from doing. Now, if that's what she wants to do with her life, who the fuck are we to say anything about it? But there was also kind of a hot minute where I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, you know what I mean?" Like, oh, maybe she was a little off the rails. And now there's this feeling that maybe that's not even her, or maybe she's been replaced. And that now after the party this weekend, there was, people thought Paris Hilton was in on it. And there was 120 hashtags on TikTok about what is it? Hashtag where is Britney? So I thought this was kind of worth bringing up in the news segment because obviously you got MK Ultra, you got the prevalence of conspiracy theories in pop culture, and you have, even like I said, all kinds of mainstream publications covering this. And I think that it's definitely signaling like a shift in public perception of the media and celebrity culture. Folks are less trustful of this. I remember growing up, people would watch E and read Entertainment Weekly, and everyone just believed this stuff, right? People love celebrities. And now I feel like everybody is waiting for that dark side to show itself, right? Nobody trusts it anymore. And I feel like reality TV has kind of backfired. Like, people really liked reality TV at first, but now what does everyone say? Oh, that shit's fake. They know it's fake.
Right.
And I think now that people have made that kind of connection, they start to look at everything like it's suspect, which maybe they should. Maybe that's a good thing that people are questioning everything. That two celebrities can't even post a picture on social media right now without half the internet debating that one of them isn't real, one of them's a fucking hologram or something. You know,
I disagree, and the only reason why I disagree is because you know, I someone that grew up with Britney Spears, as like the main focal point of my preteenhood, right?
right?
Britney was huge during the time that I was becoming a woman, and celebrities at that time. What I remember being a teenager during that time was that they were just steeped in conspiracies. I watched a video one time on YouTube about it's every conspiracy theory story starts with this, but I watched a YouTube video one time, and it was specifically about how people thought that Britney's voice was fake. And one thing that she did, because it's so high pitched, and they're like, well, when she talks, she doesn't sound that way. And there's videos of her as a child, back when she was one of the, Musketeers, right? And she didn't sound like that, so you think her voice would be more high pitched when she was, prepubescent, and it's like a big thing. And then she had like posted, and she was like aware, because people were just slamming her all the time with this. Your voice is fake. Your voice is fake. Why do you do that to your voice? So she had posted a video of her at her home, and she was singing, and just to show like, yes, this is my voice. And YouTube even went as far as to not YouTube, but the people on the internet went as far as to saying that she didn't actually sound like that. She had actually sped up the video just slightly to make her voice higher pitch, and they slowed it down, and it sounded like a normal voice. And anyway, that's just one of thousands of conspiracies that I've seen about specifically Britney Spears. And every so often you'd have somebody else come around. There's Avril Lavigne, right? She died, right? She died and she was replaced with a clone and this and the other.
Yeah.
You don't see
Yeah.
that anymore. You don't see that shit anymore with hit people today. You don't see conspiracies like that constantly. I don't know what it is about that time period and that generation, but like that generation was just all for it. And now I don't know if it's because social media has made it easier to track these people's lives. I don't know. But like you're not gonna see fucking you don't see that Doja Cat's fucking been has been cloned or fakes her voice, which we all know that she probably does. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it is weird that doesn't really happen as much anymore.
You ever hear the one about Little Bow Wow getting raped by his limo driver?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, that was one that always stuck with me. Like, what?
What the? That's crazy. That probably happened.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've never been a limo driver, and
Yeah.
I have no point of entrance in that story.
I mean,
don't know.
Justin Timberlake's fake. I mean, all these people, like, and there's just so many.
Well,
Like,
so do you remember
okay.
the Milli Vanilli thing? Because that really happened. I mean, there's a fair amount of lip syncing and audio
Oh, yeah.
tomfoolery that happens with some of these people. These
Sure.
people aren't exactly musicians. I mean,
Right.
they're more like dancers. Not to take anything. Now you do have the Justin Timberlakes, and no one better ever speak a word about Lance Bass in my presence because I absolutely love that man. But I think some of these people, we all know that like there's a difference between, I don't know why I'm going to say John Mayer, but like somebody that really plays an instrument and like sings, and there's no debate about that. Like
Yeah.
that's really their voice. They're really performers versus like here are 5 kids from Orlando that were thrown together and played a couple malls before they were shot a music video. And now they didn't spend 10 years doing underground basement shows on the club circuit like Green Day or Fall Out Boy or any of
Sure.
these. They just they're very manufactured. And I think we're very aware of that now. And because of that, we could be a little bit more cynical and doubt how much these people can really perform. So somebody saying that like, I don't know, haven't you ever heard like there was Mariah Carey performed like 2 years ago and was absolutely terrible because she didn't lip sync. They used her real audio.
Yeah, I remember that. It was during it was one of the New Year's Eves, and people were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, she doesn't really sing." And it's like, okay, she does, you guys. It's just that, you know, these things fucking happen. I mean, when they're on the stage, usually they're not really singing.
Do you remember Ashley Simpson on SNL?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, where she came out and the fucking track was all fucked up and she
all
just
fucked
started
up.
dancing around and shit.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I think that's people opening their eyes more. And to your point of they don't do it as much now. I don't know, where's music at these days. I don't even know. I remember when music used to be about like Aerosmith and Metallica and bands,
yeah.
and then it was about boy bands, and then I think it was about rap. I don't even know. I don't even who's on the top. Who's like on the Billboard charts? I
I
don't
have
even
no
know.
idea. I have no clue.
BTS, like, is that? I don't.
No, I think I don't understand. There's like something weird and cultish about BTS. I don't.
And now they're all joining the military. Like that was. Did you hear that story?
I don't know. I don't even know who BTS is.
They're like a South Korean boy band,
Okay.
and they
Is
were
are,
like they're
are they
all like
good?
18 to 21, and I think South Korea might be one of those countries with mandatory military service, like Israel and stuff. And they said, okay, we're taking a break from the band because we all have to join the military. Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and people were like, what? And then everyone's like, well, wait.
Why didn't they just like move? Like go live in a different country?
Yeah, and in October, BTS's record label said that all 7 members of the group were planning to undertake military service. I mean, hey,
That's what I'm
Elvis.
saying. Listen, if that shit had happened to like NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys, everybody would be in fucking arms. Like, no, they're replacing them with robots. Like
It,
that would
it,
be the talk of the town.
it happened to Elvis. Remember, Elvis went to fucking Vietnam.
And look how
Or
many fucking conspiracies there are about Elvis, Pato. That's all I'm saying. There aren't enough conspiracies about celebrities nowadays, so that just means that we were just conspiratorially minded, I guess. I don't know, back then, and we're just not now. I don't know what the difference
Well,
is.
I found one of the rare ones that, and I brought it up in the news segment of today's show. So they're still out there if you look hard
But it's
enough.
about Paris Hilton and Britney Spears, who have always had conspiracy surrounding them. Nobody believes a fucking thing about their lives.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. They've always been,
Why are they targets of it?
because I think because of the, well, Paris, because of the reality thing. And if there's any truth to it, then we know that if there's any truth going back to the documentary that suggests that she was brainwashed via MK Ultra style techniques in the 90s, maybe she was a plant. Maybe this was someone that they knew was going to be an heiress and that could be a pop culture influencer, and they wanted to do all this stuff to her to have her so that they could use her to do whatever. I don't know.
And they're just not doing that anymore.
Well, she had an expiration date. I mean, she was fairly popular.
No,
She
I mean
had
to
that
like the new people.
the new people. Yeah, but there's I don't know. Maybe that whole thing ran aground. How many? Look at what happened to Amanda Bynes. Look at what
Yeah.
happened to
Well,
that.
all of those kids.
Yeah, all the Disney Channel kids. I mean, Ashley Tisdale turned out okay, but like then you had Jeanette McCurdy. You know who I'm talking about?
McCurdy, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually want to read her book because her book just came out and was like,
They're all
the title is like, "I wish my mom was dead."
I'm glad my
I'm
mom is
glad
dead.
my mom is dead, so
Well, I
she
wrote
couldn't
her. I tried to get her on the show.
get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Oh my god.
I did because she talks about like actual human child sex trafficking as opposed to like what people think it is. And I would love to hear, I would love to have her come on and share that perspective of somebody that's, freshly out of it. Because it's all, oh my gosh, it's all around Dan Schneider and all the shows that he had. And
Is
that's
that the
where,
Nickelodeon foot guy?
yeah, that's the Nickelodeon foot guy. Yeah.
Oh my god, we should do a show. That's
We
got
might
to be another episode we do.
we might do a show on him. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot. But and it sucks because like that was those were my years. Those were my shows. That's my childhood. And I find out the guy's a fucking creep, and you're like, God damn it, dude. It's so disappointing when that happens. It really is. But yeah, I tried to write her and get her on the show. I didn't hear anything yet, but I'll try it again.
Well, maybe after Feminine Macabre 5 drops.
Exactly. I'm like, we're both published authors.
Right.
We're both hot women. Come on my show. We've both
Oh,
been sexually abused.
I don't
Come on
know
the
if
show.
the two of you could be across from each other. I think that would be like a devil's box scenario where just the waves would bounce back and forth too much and a rip would open in reality. And who knows what the fuck would come out.
It's going to be very sexy.
Oh, it'd be too sexy for reality to attain. We couldn't have you guys in the same room. I would literally have to act as a buffer. You would need to use me as a nullifier in between those two. That would just be too goddamn much. It would have to. It would be like at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy where they all have to hold hands together to withstand the Infinity Stone. Like it can't just be the two of you. I need to be there to dance.
Yeah, there's like I have like certain celebrities that I pester every little bit to come on the show, and one of these days they're going to say yes. Someone's going to say yes.
Oh, Jeanette McCurdy. I like her.
So anyway, okay. Well, maybe we'll do an episode on Dan Schneider. Do you guys want us to do an episode on that? Would you be interested in us talking about?
So here's a brief rundown on the Nickelodeon foot guy. He was a producer for Nickelodeon that was a fucking pederast, and they realized this after the fact. You go back and watch all the shit that he did, and it's always got little girls' feet are like featured prominently in all this stuff. There was other stuff.
Feet's like the big thing, but there was tons and tons of other stuff. He was the biggest moneymaker on the network. I mean,
Right.
Aside from SpongeBob, which I think single-handedly probably crushes his sales, but the guy's made a bunch of shows and a bunch of shows that and love and grew up with. He did all that. He did Kenan and Kel. He did the Amanda Show. He went on to go do iCarly. I mean, and Drake and Josh. It just continues. He might as well have owned Nickelodeon at the time. And come to find out, the dude's a fucking. First of all, he had other issues sexualizing the kids on and off screen, including using them a lot for his foot fetishes, for his own personal foot fetishes. It's just a whole fucking mess. It's a whole mess.
Yeah.
If you guys don't want to hear it here, we'll put it on the Patreon. Either way, we're going to talk about it.
I
So,
think we need to do it because that was something that I picked up on, like, because so I'm 10 years older than you. So when you
right.
say those were your shows, you were what, like 13 watching these?
No, I was younger than that.
All right. So let's say you were
Probably.
10.
I mean, for me, it's always been on the air. So I would say more like, I mean, because I remember like when Are You Afraid of the Dark was on.
I'm not counting that though, because that wasn't overtly pervy.
No, but it was the same time.
They started sexualizing kids in Disney shows. Um, Probably I started noticing it when I was in my mid 20s, so you would have been in your teens. And then when my son was born, when I was 27, and I was watching mostly Disney Junior, but I mean the other ones too, you would kind of flip around. And I would see some of these shows and I'd be like, these chicks are way too fuckable for this to be like kids programming. Like I'm picking, and now granted, I'm not a perv, and anyone that asks me if I go older or younger, I usually like older women. My wife is older than me, so like I do not have a predilection for young girls whatsoever. And I was like looking at like some of these like live action shows on Nickelodeon and Disney, and being like, these girls are entirely too sexy for this. You know what I mean?
So I
And
was watching it. Keenan and Kel came out in 1996, and I used to
that's
watch that.
but that's different. Same with Amanda's show. She wasn't sexualized on
That's
that.
not different because all that had the same shit, and that was the same cast. All that came out in 1994. Okay, Nickelodeon at that time had a foot as its logo. Like it did.
No, that goes back to like you can't do that on television. I remember that. That's a Monty Python thing though too. Well, we should really thoroughly research this because I don't know if I necessarily have my timeline straight in my head either.
Sure.
What this guy did. All I'm saying is like I know he was around for a very long time, but I'm saying I noticed a shift. Even if he was involved with Amanda, the Amanda show, and Keenan and Kel, which I watched like kind of in high school. Not, I was still a little bit too old for it, but like I remember thinking the Amanda show was hysterical. I absolutely love that girl, and but there was a shift between that and then like that, like the Disney shows that were later, where like the kids like run hotels and stuff, or like Sweet Life and Zach and
I never
Cody,
watched Disney, so
or
I don't know about that.
iCarly and that kind of shit.
And iCarly I was a teenager, so I wasn't watching it by then. Um, but I mean, yeah, you're right. We'll just have to go back and you know look at everything. It's a topic for a different day.
Sure.
Watch some YouTube videos about it. There's tons of them. Tons of them.
Yeah.
But lots of weird shit out there about Dan Schneider. And I don't know what that has to do with anything, but speaking of problematic individuals, Valiant Thor.
This week's topic.
Which I don't think had a foot fetish, but he very well could have.
Well, he wasn't real, so he most certainly did not.
It wasn't real. I'm actually really shocked that you take that stance.
You know what? Can I be honest? I didn't before this episode. I'm going to jump right into it because usually you ask me,
that's what I'm going to ask.
what did you think about Valiant Thor? I knew who he was. I knew the story. I didn't know the specifics of it though. I didn't know that it all came from one source. I thought that it was like a more widely spread story. And I think my first like more than surface level exposure to the story actually came last year during American Horror Story. They had they did the double feature season, which I think was 2021. Yeah. And part one was with what's his name? Who's that little guy? Macaulay Culkin. And it was about vampires in a New England town. It was basically a ripoff of Salem's Lot. Part two, however, Macaulay Culkin.
I know, I love that. Oh, he's that little guy, Macaulay.
Little guy. Part two had to do with UFOs, which I love because one of my favorite things about American Horror Story was the second season, where there is an alien subplot that just is in there. And I loved that they did that so early on. And it was great to see them come back to it. And the second half of that season had to do with basically alien abduction. And it gives a pretty unified, cohesive theory about alien abduction, about Roswell, about Eisenhower, about the Cold War, about Valiant Thor, weaves all these things together into a pretty cohesive narrative and brings it through to modern day. And what American Horror Story suggests was that Valiant Thor was an emissary from or claimed to be an emissary from like an intergalactic alien federation, and he was sent to Earth to help us um, transition from our current state to a more peaceful state, so that we could join this intergalactic federation. And prior to that, they make in the show, they weave in that he's working with the Greys, and that basically the Greys came to Earth around Roswell and said that basically they were going to do a biological exchange. We would give you technology, and in return, you're going to let us experiment and abduct 800 Americans a year. And we're going to go to you with this offer first, and if you don't take it, then we're going to go to the Russians. And America took it, right? And they let the aliens set up shop underneath the White House or the Pentagon or whatever, and that's where they did their thing. And eventually, the operation grew to a bigger size, and in the 50s, Valiant Thor came into the picture and kind of renegotiated the deal a little bit, and he was instrumental in them creating Area 51. There's also a scene where Valiant Thor is fucking Mamie Eisenhower, played by Sarah Paulson, which was kind of hot, because he's an android or whatever. But he used to fuck her a lot because it's Ryan Murphy, it's American Horror Story, whatever. And eventually it's revealed, though, that Valiant Thor is not who he seems, nor the aliens, that they're creating this hybrid program because what they want to do is wipe out all the human beings on the Earth and then take over the Earth for themselves. The whole reason they wanted the Earthlings to disarm our nuclear arsenal is because we would have destroyed the planet, and their primary goal was to capture the planet and to populate the planet for themselves. And if we destroyed the environment, they wouldn't be able to do that. So their whole plan was to genocide of the human race anyway. They just wanted to make sure that the environment stayed intact. That was the plot line of American Horror Story, at least. So I knew that that wasn't like I don't want to say like factual or real, because none of this stuff is factual or real. I knew that that was a riff on the Valiant Thor mythology, but I didn't necessarily know how much. And
Okay.
after researching this week's episode, it doesn't matter because none of this shit is real anyway. And
I'm
that's all I got to
so
say
very
about that.
I'm so very curious. I'm excited to just dive right into it. So yeah, I've heard about Valiant Thor a lot, mostly because there was a claim made by somebody who's always been very dishonest, Andy Colvin. Um, who, if you don't know Andy, I don't suggest you find out who he is now, but um, in one of the books that he had republished, his thing is like he takes all these dead researchers, okay, and he buys the rights to their books and then he republishes them on Amazon to turn a quick buck, right? Which is whatever, that's cool. But then he'll go in and add his 2 cents as if like he knew the authors or wrote alongside them or whatever, and like he'll add details to it. He had made a claim about Valiant Thor, saying that he showed a picture of Valiant Thor to Tanya Derenberger and asked her if that was injured cold, and she said yes, which Tanya denies that she ever said that. It's not injured. So, I've been vaguely familiar with the topic, but I've never really deep dived it much. And that's mostly why I wanted to cover it, because a lot of people talk about this story like it's like the holy grail of UFO stories. And it's not. So,
No,
anyway.
those pictures are just dudes at a barbecue, dude. There's no it's like people in suits, and it's like I love that, like that's how low the ceiling is for people to show up. Like I was at a bar once, and this guy was so drunk he could barely talk straight, and he was trying to tell me that he knew the newscaster on TV. and
Okay.
he was like, I know her. I went to high school with her. And granted, the chick that he was talking about was from the neighborhood. Like, her name's Robin Baumgarten. She's on WGN.
Local news
And
people usually are, yeah.
yeah, well, she was like very local to the South Side. And he was like, you want to see? I have her phone number, my cell phone. And he pulled out his cell phone, and he had a text message where someone had typed the word Robin Baumgarten, and that was his proof that he knew her.
Oh, okay.
And me and the girl that I was with looked at him and were like, what? Like, that's this, right? Like, I got
Yeah.
this picture of a guy in a suit at a fucking barbecue, but that's really an alien, and you can't see it, but Eisenhower's standing off camera. Like, fucking
Right.
whatever.
Right. It's taking out the Pentagon. You know, that's the thing. So, and that's another thing is that there's not just one picture. There's two completely separate. Well, you said, Pato, it's only been covered by one person. That's not true. It's been covered by two very heavily. And both of those two individuals tell very different stories. It does
So
not add up.
walk me through that, because I did get a little. I didn't know about Frank Strange's in his book. So he wrote a book, Stranger at the Pentagon, published in 1967, which tells the story of Valiant Thor. At that point, that this story was technically already a decade old. So who else? I didn't know. So I thought that there was multiple sources for this. So then after doing research, I thought it was only Frank Strange's. Who's the other person that talked about this,
Phil Schneider.
and who's he?
Phil Schneider is the one who first talked about this. So he would go around and do lectures about Valiant Thor, and he didn't publish it. And I think that was the issue, and that's where Frank Stranges came along and was like, "Well, I'm gonna take my opportunity." He probably went and listened to one of Phil Schneider's fucking talks and built the whole fucking, but built the rest of the story around it. They both have wildly different accounts. Phil, it is the very first one to have produced a photo of Valiant Thor. And the one that I think you're referring to is a bunch of there's like two young dudes and a lady. The picture
Yeah.
that Phil has like a middle-aged looking man, a blonde-haired older man, that doesn't look anything like the picture that Frank put out. So Phil Schneider tells all kinds of crazy stories. These are my notes on Frank
Oh, I see
Stranges.
what you're saying. I'm looking at the two pictures now. Yeah, these are not even
Two totally
remotely
different individuals.
right.
Frank Stranges, this is my note on Frank Stranges. This is all I got for him. Frank Stranges is fucking insane. Um,
Yeah, but
and
I like his Valiant Thor better because he looks like Chris Isaac.
he's a lot more attractive. He's a lot more
Yeah,
handsome. But
yeah.
two totally different individuals. But Phil Schneider is also insane. But there is some kind of shock that you didn't come across that, because there is something that we'll get into about him. He used to tell all kinds of crazy fucking stories. I mean, he's talked about how he's had shootouts with aliens, and I mean, fucking crazy shit, right? And his story predates Frank's by about a decade.
Uh-huh.
And then Frank didn't tell his until about 20 years later. According to Phil, Valiant Thor worked for the U.S. government for about 40 to 50 years, whereas Frank says that he was there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So big difference
3-year
there.
mission, yeah.
He was on a three-year mission. They both pretty much have the same concept. I think Frank definitely had a lot more details. Was that he's a Venusian? That's right? Venusian. Right.
Well, these are all hypothetical terms.
Not Venetian, right? Venusian. But he was from Venus. Okay, the man came from Venus. According to Frank, he came on his ship, the what is it? The Victor 1, and he was part of the Council 12, which was a council of people within the Galactic Federation. I mean, my God, I'm trying not to gag saying all this. It's so cringy. But anyway, Frank's story is that Valiant Thor landed in Alexandria, Virginia in March of 1957. He was encountered by a couple of police officers, and he told the police officers, "I want to talk to your president." So they just let him, and that president at the time happened to be Eisenhower. Eisenhower is steeped with UFO lore, and it's not just Valiant Thor. I would like to talk about some of the other stuff that he's into eventually, but not today.
Mhm.
Eisenhower and then Roosevelt's like all into cryptids and shit. It's pretty cool. But anyway, so Valiant Thor was here to help us because we were making nukes and that's bad and we're going to hurt ourselves. You'll shoot your eye out, kid, is what Valiant Thor came down and said to us. And he said, I'll make you this offer. I will trade you some great technologies and also technologies that will help you live longer and cure illnesses, and then I'm going to show you how to live a peaceful life like we do and all these wonderful riches if we just promise to stop making nukes. And us in America, we said, nah, no thanks.
Right.
So yeah, so then he stayed here and worked on other projects. I don't know.
Well, I understand that. And I've never I get that part of the story. That sounds realistic to me because you're an advanced race coming here under the guise of peace, and you're asking us to completely disarm ourselves.
Yeah.
You know,
I get that too. If we nuke our
yeah,
planet and fuck our planet over, then that fucks our atmosphere over, and that could have lasting effects on other planets around us.
right. No, I mean, I get why. And if the American Horror Story theory is that their primary concern was the environment, the planet. The
Right,
planet is of no use to them if we destroy it, if
right.
we irradiate the whole thing. So, get us to disarm, and then they can do whatever they want with us. But as long as we're nuclear equipped, we're going to attempt to deploy those weapons. Whether or not they'll be successful in defeating the aliens doesn't matter as much as the fact that we know it'll be successful in destroying the environment in the process, in which case the prize that they want is lost. You know what I mean? So it's almost like the one thing that we have going for us is the fact that we do refuse to disarm. Because as long as we're still armed, we might not be able to technically defeat the aliens, but we'll be able to destroy the prize that they're going for. So it draws this out into a prolonged conflict, right? Um, which is an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, well, I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. Let's slow it down for a minute and pretend that whoever's listening to this has never heard of this before. Okay.
Okay.
So a couple of details about Valiant Thor himself. As mentioned, sometimes he's a blonde older man, sometimes he's a dark-haired handsome man, uh, depending on the story that you read. He had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
His primary mission was to maintain order in the Milky Way galaxy, and that's why again he came here, made us the offer. Frank says that Valiant Thor told him that he was 490 years old, whereas Phil said that their life expectancy was 490 years old. So who knows which one? Yeah. He had an IQ of 1200 somehow. And he could appear and disappear at will, manipulating the molecular structure of his body, which, means that he probably didn't look, let's just pretend he's real, probably didn't look like a person. He was just making himself look like a person. Then why the fuck did he give himself 6 fingers and toes on each hand and foot? I don't know. Whatever. I guess that's neither here nor there. So the president tried to like press him about life on other planets and things like that, and he wouldn't budge. He really didn't want to talk about it and disclose that information. There's a story about how allegedly somebody tried to inject him with something for some reason, and it really pissed him off. And he told them if they did that again, then they wouldn't be very happy. They would regret it, he said. Frank, this is where things kind of fall apart. Frank Strange's would give a talk and would talk about Valiant Thor. And then he says that at one of his lectures, he was approached by somebody who offered to introduce them. And so he did. And then that's where Frank got all these details from, which is insane. But It doesn't work that way. Um, yeah. So, you know, okay. Frank Strange's, like I said, he's fucking insane. Okay. He is an evangelist. So everything that he talks about is very, very steeped in religion, including the story with Valiant Thor. He mixes like aliens into his religion,
Right.
which is whatever. That I understand that. I mean, because obviously aliens exist, so you got to explain it away somehow. But I mean, really pushed it and talked crazy. I mean, just listen to the guy talk for 5 minutes. He sounds nuts. And it's whatever. Phil Schneider was also very much like that, but again, told much more fantastical stories about things that he was directly involved with. Frank in the or not Frank, Phil in the 90s, and this part is true, died under unusual circumstances. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he was separated at the time, he was found dead in his home. And the ex-wife has actually publicly come out and said that, well, he had been dead for a long time. So I wanted to see his body because I wanted to make sure, because they said that, he had a heart attack. That was the initial claim. He had a heart attack. She's like, so I just wanted to look at his physical body and see, if there was any injuries or anything. The coroner wouldn't let her because the body had sat there decomposing for so long. They thought that would be a bad idea for her, which I can understand. And sometimes that is a bad idea. But you can do it. You're allowed. But that's okay. She didn't. And then later when the autopsy came out, they actually put his cause of death was by suicide. And he strangled himself with a catheter tube. And she says that that's not possible because the man was missing fingers and had a fucked up shoulder. He wouldn't have been able to physically strangle himself. And he had other things. I mean, he had a gun at home. He was very sickly, so he took all this medication. He could have just OD'd on that and died. If he really wanted to kill himself, there were easier ways to do it than him slowly and painfully strangling himself. With a catheter tube. And, she is very insistent that he was taken out because of the things that, he was talking about. And he told everybody all the time, if I'm never going to kill myself, it's not going to happen. But then again, if you are somebody that's steeped in conspiracies and you're also done with life, a really hilarious thing to do would be to tell everybody that if you die by suicide, that it's the government's fault, and then you would go kill yourself. I mean, people have done crazier shit. So
Yeah.
So
Or I think something else to consider too is that the company you keep, if you're telling crazy stories, your friends and colleagues are people that believe crazy stories and tell crazy stories.
right.
There's a certain element of mental instability in your crowd, and all it takes is for the wrong person to come over on the wrong day, and you guys get in an argument about the wrong thing, and they pop off and fucking just strangle you. It doesn't need to be a CIA agent that crawls through your window at
Well,
night,
that's true.
chokes you with your own catheter. It could be the guy that, got connected with at the latest UFO speech convention. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it could be anybody.
you're traveling in those circles. And honestly, like, we're not going to solve that crime
No. Yeah,
on
no.
Google
I
all
yeah.
these years later,
No. He's dead and it doesn't matter. It's just that it is something to consider. I will put this out there and I will be very adamant. And I think that if anybody disagrees, you're just silly. Like, we know Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. We all know that.
Right.
He didn't. So we know that the government's capable of doing that, or somebody is capable of taking people out to silence them. It does happen. It does.
Yeah, sure does.
Did this happen to Phil Schneider? Probably not. No. Because and that's only because the man. It's like the boy who cried wolf, right? Even if it did happen to Phil Schneider, he said so much crazy shit his entire life. Nobody fucking believes him now.
Yeah, I always wonder, especially with Philip Spector, not Philip Spector, but who's the other guy? Frank Strange.
Yeah.
They're allowed. They seem to operate for a very long time without being killed, and you wonder what the tipping point is, if there is one. Same thing, and I brought this up when we had Alan Greenfield on the show. Why are you still alive?
Yeah.
I asked him
Yeah.
point
You did
blank.
ask a point blank.
Hard hitting journalist Pat O'Sullivan asked Alan Greenfield, "Why the fuck are you still alive?"
And he said, well, they've tried to kill me.
Right, but I mean that his. I'm not saying that if he felt his life wasn't threatened, I am not making light of it. I think that would be a terrible thing to have to live with, to know that like your life, you almost lost your life that fateful afternoon after the orgy in the fucking woods or whatever he was saying. But like, I think that like you're right. We got to Epstein, and here's the thing: whoever got to Epstein wasn't even really clean about it. Like it's a
No.
fucking meme now.
Right.
That's how sloppy and unnatural that death looked. But
Everybody knows. Yeah.
everybody knows. But nothing's happening about it. And guess what?
No.
We're all paying our taxes and going to work tomorrow.
Right.
So like, here's the thing. If you're gonna take a shot now, maybe times have changed, and maybe that boldness came out of desperation. Maybe Epstein, like, there was no quite easier way to do it, or maybe just no one gives a fuck anymore. It's the 21st century, YOLO, bitch. You know
Well,
what I
dude's a
mean?
pedophile. Fuck him. He deserved to die. I mean, hell.
Right. Well, that was the other thing too, is that no one mistook this man for an innocent. But let's
Right.
face it, his death covers up the tracks of how many other pedophiles that will go unpunished now. So
Yeah.
if your ultimate goal in life is to see pedophiles punished, don't count Epstein's assassination as a victory, because what that was he died so that many, 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 many others could go free. Right. Not to make this whole thing about Epstein. My point is that, like, I don't know. If they want to kill people, they fucking kill people, and they do it how they want, when they want,
Sure.
on their own timeline. This idea that like these guys lived and made their speeches for decades and then fucking died under fishy circumstances in their shitty apartments one night. Look, maybe that was the CIA, or maybe it was the pizza man. I don't know.
It's Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, it was some fucking shifty
I don't know.
twink meth head that they brought in off the streets.
Yeah.
That
Right. Yes,
they
I agree.
yeah, it could have been anything. I don't know.
I agree. So why? So okay. So now let's get into I agree. I just wanted to acknowledge the Epstein shit because, again, I'm telling you guys that yes, I believe that people in higher places of power do kill people to silence them.
Sure.
I don't believe that Phil Schneider is probably one of them.
Right.
And that's because of what Phil Schneider presented to the world the entirety of his life, right? So the moral of that story is don't be a fucking liar. Don't make bullshit up. And I've said this before. What is going on already with the unknown is already fucking fantastic. You don't have to lie about it. Like, it's already interesting enough. Like, don't be that person. And then when you get offed and you're credible your entire life, then maybe I'll believe that it was the government that did it. But let's get into why we think this story's bullshit. Unless, Pato, did I miss anything about the generals of Valiant Thor?
I mean, I think Frank Strange had he was a preacher. He was an evangelical, and he went to great lengths to connect Valiant Thor with the Christian church.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure that's what you're getting to next, or at least are
Well,
we getting there?
I touched on it for a second, but you know more about that kind of stuff than I do. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that it's we have a hard enough time believing religion as is. I don't think you need to bring in Venusians with it. Like, just one thing at a time. And this Frank Strange is, I think sometimes you can look at the stories people tell, and you can learn a lot about their psyches from them. And this is something that, as a filmmaker myself, I can look back at different movies that I've made, and I can tell where I was at that point in my life, what relationship I was in, what my mental state was, what I was doing for fun, who my friends were, what I was listening to musically, all that stuff. That when I make these little movies, they're very much snapshots of like where I am in my life, right? And I think that the shit that Frank Strange's whole shtick about Valiant Thor coming to Earth to spread the message of Christ, it very much fits his aesthetic, right? So his background was as a preacher, all right? But he was also a filmmaker too. He produced a film in the late '60s, the year after his book came out about Valiant Thor. He produced a film called No Tears for the Damned, and it's about a man driven insane by his adulterous wife and domineering mother. A man driven insane by his adulterous wife and domineering mother terrorizes the city of Las Vegas, brutally murdering streetwalkers and homosexuals. So that was a movie that he produced. And produce means it can mean two different things. One, it could just mean that you give them the money to make it, or it can mean that you kind of help come up with the story and then you find the actors and you find the director and you produce it. You put all the players together to make it, right? So I really don't know what level of involvement he had, but at the very least, he paid for it. And this movie, No Tears for the Damned, would go on and play the exploitation circuit all over the United States. Um, with let me some of the movies that it played with. So this was a real thing. Like you can find it on IMDb, you can find the posters for it, and if you Google search the title and then go to images, you can find a lot of what's it called? Like movie bills of movies that it played with, right? So here are some movies that his movie played with on a double bill. Ride a Wild Stud, Blackmailed Wives, and Suburban Roulette.
Oh,
Suburban Roulette has the title as like the little caption. Get an eyeful of what goes on behind the keyholes of suburbia. Both of these films are not rated and are labeled as adult entertainment. So I don't want to say he was making porn, but he was making very lurid exploitation films. Let me put it like that. And what's interesting is that his film is the story of a man driven insane by his adulterous wife and domineering mother who terrorizes the city of Las Vegas, brutally murdering streetwalkers and homosexuals. So let's let's be armchair psychologists for a second here. All right. This film condemns strong women figures, right? And adulterous wife and a domineering mother, right? Those are the main antagonists.
okay.
And they provoke a man to go on a murder spree, killing sexually liberated women and homosexuals. So all of those, if you were to say that like that type of film was produced by an evangelical preacher, you could kind of be like, well, wow, that's a little bit hardcore, right? Like it fits where you would think they would be socially, right? Where they want to condemn homosexuality and sexual liberation, and also women that don't know their place in the home. But at the same time, to make a movie based on that you're going to run side by side with movies like Suburban Roulette
Yeah.
or stuff like that. Like it's kind of, I think it's very interesting. It shows that he's an entrepreneur, right? Because lots of people have money, they don't all go and finance exploitation films. Okay, that he's got an aesthetic. He's got something that he's really trying to preach, which is in line with his evangelical roots. Okay, but he's also willing to engage in non-direct manners to get this message across. He's willing to make an exploitation movie that's going to run the exploitation circuit, but it's going to have a very kind of conservative message to it, right?
Okay.
And that's what's interesting about his Valiant Thor story. The story of Valiant Thor is not all that much different than The Day the Earth Stood Still.
That's correct.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
The
So
original. Yeah.
yeah,
Not
so
the.
it's got kind of a basis in Hollywood and film. Like it's a story that we're all familiar with, but he takes it, and when that alien walks out of the spaceship, he starts preaching the gospel of Christ.
Yep.
So to me, this seems like just and a lot of these, I don't know, a lot of due to religion is, this isn't everybody, but there's a buck to be made there. And there's a lot of people that like, hey,
Oh yeah.
my fam, people's family trades are. There's a lot of electricians in the O'Sullivan family, right? There's a lot of carpenters. There's a lot of engineers. Some people, everybody's a cop, right? My dad was a cop. I was a cop. My grandpa was a firefighter. My dad was, stuff like that, right? Everybody's school teachers, whatever. And it's just kind of the business, and you grow up in the business and you learn the business, and it becomes second nature to you. And some of that same thing is with religion and evangelical religion, where that's how you're going to make your money. You're not a Catholic priest taking a vow of poverty, where you're going to live off the church and you're going to go to the monastery and you're going to get or whatever, and you're going to give up pussy and all that shit.
Sure.
And no, you're going to be an evangelical. You're going to be a Protestant, where you can still marry and I can still whatever, and I can also still make a buck. And honestly, this feels like an extension of this guy trying to do the cash grab, and maybe finding creative ways to work in to tie in the gospel. And maybe that was part of his. Maybe he thought he was doing the Lord's work by it. I don't know. Or maybe maybe it was just all about making money, and he knew that religion was a great way to fucking turn a buck, and so was all this science fiction new age shit. And I'm going to stop talking for a second, but I do have an article from the LA Times from 1985 that I want to read about him.
Okay.
That kind of paints a similar picture of him as well, but I'll let you.
Oh, okay. You want me to go ahead? Here's one thing that I hope that we have genuinely taught you guys here at On Wednesdays We Talk Weird. And here's what we know is that sexual regression and sexual liberation is like the root of all life. It really is. It really makes or break a person, doesn't it? We have continuously found out over and over again that these problematic individuals tend to be extremely sexually regressed. Like in the case of Frank Strange's, reminds me a lot of the Heaven's Gate people. Reminds me a lot of that. And we know that they were gay and didn't want to admit it, Just be who you are. Always choose sexual liberation, because it's obviously that is the key to you being a decent person.
Mm-hmm. Get your fuck on. I mean, I know that we probably talk about sex probably 5% too much on this show,
right?
But
probably. But for real,
yeah. But I think don't throw out the baby out with the bathwater.
Stop being afraid of it.
Yeah.
Just you don't have to talk about sex all the time and show your boobs everywhere or whatever.
But if you do, you'll reach number 5 on the Paranormality Magazine fucking top 10 podcast. And
you get a sponsorship for Manscaped.
And your co-host will be part of the Feminine Macabre, Volume 5.
I mean, I'm just saying you don't have to be that person, but you also don't have to be afraid of whatever sex it is that you enjoy, unless that sex is harming other people, and then you got some problems.
Non-consenting people.
Yes, right. 100% consensual sex. I mean, do it till you're sore, Do it till you're pregnant or the father of 10 million babies. I mean, whatever it is you need to do to make yourself not be a piece of shit.
Right. Don't yuck someone else's yum, too.
No. Yeah, leave other people alone. You mind your own hole. Or appendage, or both. That's what you're into. We don't kink shame here. But
no.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that a point. I think it's hilarious that every time we talk about one of these people, surprise, surprise, we should start doing I don't know what we should do. We need the Pee Wee Herman scream every time we talk about somebody being sexually repressed. Something. We'll do something. I don't know. Let's make a greatest hits episode of all the people we talked about.
Right.
Anyway, take it away with the article there, Pato.
Oh, so this is from 1985, and actually September 11th, 1985. Frank Strange was giving a presentation at the Van Nuys Town Hall Friday evening for the monthly gathering of National Investigations Committee on UFOs. So this was a California-based organization founded by Strange in 1964 to document encounters on Earth with those from beyond. In the 20-plus years, Strange has compiled many first-hand accounts, including a few of his own. These are contained in a library of books, pamphlets, and cassette tapes. So it kind of goes on to detail the different books that he was selling at this. So this is a news article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you Google it, you can find it. It's LA Times, 1985, Frank Grimes, and it just kind of very just by way of presenting the facts. Talks about how he's just there to sell stuff.
Yeah.
His titles include Saucer Mania, unbelievable stories of crashed saucers and bodies, government secrecy, and UFO photos for $4.50. My Friend from Beyond Earth, the story of an extraterrestrial Valiant Thor and his friendship with the author, $4.50. Strange also publishes the UFO Journal. The spring issue carried an article by him on the Men in Black. Strange says the Men in Black are Lucifer's angels. He offered this defense against them. And if you have not yet subscribed to the Inner Space Link Confidential newsletter, please write me without further delay. Therein you will read and know the secret of the Ring of Fire. You will be able to perform the sacred ceremony in the privacy of your home, and you will never again have to be subjected to the forces of evil. Please send a self-addressed stamp envelope today. So that's, and it does that a little bit where the article is a little bit tongue in cheek, but it does talk about the different stuff that he's selling. There's a reference to right. One of the speakers that got up that day was a Mrs. Gee, former employee at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, who he said had told him she personally recorded the collection at the base of more than 1,000 crates of spacecraft debris, including the mutilated bodies of aliens.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. So we knew about that. But he's selling it. What I thought was kind of interesting is that he was selling a bunch of different stuff, and they in the article talks about different people buying the different things that he's selling, and he brings up the Piri Reis maps. Are you familiar with these at all?
I'm not, no.
So he was selling copies of these things, and I had to look this up because I actually have heard these mentioned a couple times. They were part of Graham Hancock's Netflix thing about ancient apocalypse.
Oh.
And basically it's this series of maps that were found in that were dated back to the 1500s. And they were found like in Turkey. And basically it's the maps that they think Columbus used when he went looking for the New World. And they show a couple different things that are interesting. They show South America attached to Antarctica. And people think that these maps, they're old maps. I mean, they're real. They're not like fake or anything. But it's one of those things where, are they incorrect because the world once looked like that? Or are they incorrect because you're talking about people making these things 600 years ago, right? Without real sophisticated equipment. Like, obviously these people, they're more accurate than you think they would be. But the fact that they have like Argentina touching the South Pole, is that because at one point they were connected? Or is that because that's just like the map that they drew and they didn't really know or something, And he even, Frank Strange goes on to claim that you can only draw these maps from the air and that these maps were somehow created by people flying around in UFOs, which there's no real evidence for. I mean, I don't know why you think you'd have to be in the air to make these maps, but
Okay.
I thought it was interesting you brought those up because I had actually heard of those in other sources, and the fact that he was then selling these at his talks, which is something that he has nothing to do with whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, he photocopied these maps probably from something in a book at a library somewhere, and then he put them in a plastic slipcover, and he was selling them for $5 a piece at his talks.
He's like, look, I have maps. I'm credible.
Right, and it's literally something that anyone with a library card probably could have found and then photocopied. But he was using that as more merch to sell, which I think anyone that's gone to any of these conventions knows that sometimes you just take the fucking cooler out of your garage and slap a sticker on it and try to sell it at the fucking Withville UFO Fest, We're selling ashtrays with cigarette butts still in it. Hey, look, it's the Wednesdays we talk word.
You stop it.
Right?
Everybody knows.
It's only been used a handful of times.
That is not true. We do sell grinders and ashtrays, but they are
Ashes
clean.
are going to show up with like a laundry basket. Like, all right, who wants panties? Who wants socks? Who wants leggings?
I should. I'd probably make money at these things. Fucking hair clippings and shit.
Right. So I told my wife, I'm like, don't do laundry. The saga of the washing machine has finally come to a close. And at the end, I was like, just sell these things. We've
Every
got a
time,
pile
yeah.
of dirty panties in the fucking. Someone's going to want to buy the panties of Pato's wife, I'm sure.
That's true.
We put these up on Teespring. Start moving these fucking things.
That's not how Teespring works, but
Or
they
start
should.
an Etsy store. I don't know.
They should. Well, maybe. Yeah, there you go. Etsy store. Yeah. So okay. So why do you think that the Valiant Thor story is bullshit?
Why?
Yeah.
I think I was just when I found out that it was mostly what we know about that story, that mythology, comes from this Frank Strange character. He didn't seem to know what the fuck he was talking about. He seemed very dubious, and that just made the whole thing seem kind of BS.
Yeah. Listen to him for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and his connection to the church, and then his also the fact that his turn as an exploitation filmmaker, which is strange that I would use somebody making exploitation films as a way to attack their character. But I think in this situation, I mean, it'd be one thing if I was trying to sell fucking UFO books and shit. You know what I mean? Or I don't know. Maybe that's a really bad example. But
Okay, I'll tell you why I think it's bullshit.
Okay.
Because you got Phil's story that predates Frank's story. Their facts don't match up. Okay, they both have pictures, but that just sounds like to me Frank totally ripped off Phil's like idea. I think that back then, this was between like the 40s and the 60s. Like you didn't have like Google now, right? So if you had this guy Phil going around showing his picture of Valiant Thor and telling his Valiant Thor story, it's not like you could get on Reddit and be like, "Hey, can I see that other guy's picture of Valiant Thor?" And you guys tell me about his story. Like it wasn't that simple. You had to actually physically go out and be able to see these people. I think Frank just entirely ripped the story off of Phil, who already is also another crazy person who made it up. It doesn't make sense. Why is the guy's fucking name Valiant Thor? That's a very Earth name. Okay. I can totally believe that an alien would come to the United States government and would offer to like cure all of our diseases and give us people a better life because they want to continue to make money because they're powered from greed. But then why wouldn't that alien, okay, the Americans aren't the only people in this country. Why wouldn't they then go to like a more impoverished country and sell their technologies to them and make deals with them? Like that never happened anywhere else except for the United States. We're not the end all be all. We don't run the fucking world. Okay. There's so much about it that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And it's disappointing. It is disappointing. But there's no real evidence to support that this actually happened. I mean, there's nothing. It's just like me being like, oh, well, I live close to the Air Force Base. So I went to the Air Force Base and I talked to an alien from there. And that alien, his name is Grand Jesus. And he's trying to get us to stop making nukes. And I mean, I could tell the same fucking story. Anybody could. Anybody could, because there's no evidence that backs it whatsoever. It's just telling a story. It's the same as me being like, well, maybe not me, but like, I don't know, my uncle being like, it was me in the Bigfoot costume in that video. Anybody can say anything. Like you're allowed to say whatever you want, whether or not it's true, makes the difference. And there's just nothing else backing this up. So, that's it. I mean, there's no evidence for it. It doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, and I think did you bring up the Venetian thing?
Oh yeah, that's right. You can't live on Venus. Nobody lives on
Right.
Venus.
So, and that's something that once again, like I know I've brought up on this show before, is that early contactees, early alien, not abductees, but people that have contact with aliens, there's always a name, there's always a location, they're always from somewhere and they have a name and all this stuff. And I feel like that stuff is a little bit more romantic and personal.
Yeah, make that shit up. Yeah.
But it makes less sense,
for them to live somewhere or to live on Venus.
Right. Or, I mean,
Venus specifically, right?
Yeah, or just I mean, I don't wanna call anyone else out on the carpet, but I mean that there's a couple stories out there where people experience a very specific individual with a very specific name that comes from a very specific location, and you're just and it I think that that kind of stuff is a little bit we're now realizing that that's not true. Like,
Well,
there was a time where, like, we didn't know enough about the fucking planets and shit, so when someone said, "Oh, they're from Venus," we could all look at each other and be like, "Wow, they're from Venus," and now we're like, "Well, no, Venus is, like, all gas, like, nothing lives there." You know what I mean? There's no flat
yeah.
surface, like, it's not possible. But we didn't know that back then, same thing with, like, when the whole alien abduction stuff revolved around, "We're from this solar system, we're from this planet and this location." And now the prevailing theory is that, well, they're from other dimensions or something, or it's time travel or whatever. That there's less stories about us them being from one specific point on the map, and more like they're from another direction that we can't conceptualize or something. I don't know. It's just
Well, if
it's
you're going to
bullshit.
hoax, if you're going to hoax an alien story, it has to be outside of our solar system. We can see everything inside of our solar system. We know what's going on here. We can't see outside of it. I mean, we kind of can, but not enough to really know. It's a very interesting concept. A lot of people will use this argument. I already know. I already hear you guys. I already know you guys are going to start talking to me. You're yelling right now that we found some things on Venus that could potentially support life. No, 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 no. That's the thing. You got it backwards. Okay. Venus started off as a really probable planet to eventually have life on it. As the sun grew, okay, it overheated the shit out of Venus and ruined any chances of it having life on it. All right. That is the way that is. Okay. So let's talk about Valiant Thor then for a minute. Some of the other claims that was made about him were like some things that he had going on physically. He had a larger heart than usual. He had one lung. Okay. And he didn't like have normal blood. He had a different type of blood. I can't remember what it was. Doesn't matter. But he didn't have like the blood like we have blood. And so and then in one of the stories, I think it was Phil's, actually it might have been Frank's even, said that like they had to wear a special belt in order to be on our planet or something, which is ridiculous. But okay, all right, if all that is true, why then does he look like a white guy?
Looks like Chris Isaac.
Right, why does he look like some white guy in either picture? Why does he just look like some white guy, you know um with six fingers and six toes? Ooh, that's really spaceman like. I don't know, it just sounds really ridiculous. But yeah, and then on top of that, nothing can live on Venus. I know I've talked about the possibility of Tesla being a Venusian. I don't think he was ever from Venus. I don't think anybody that's ever claimed that they're from Venus is really from Venus. That's not to say that people making those claims are hoaxers. It could be that thing could be Valiant Thor is telling us that's where he's from. It could be Valiant Thor isn't his name. That's just a name he gave himself when he's here. You know, I don't know. But this story in particular, still, no matter what, is bullshit. And again, if you're going to fake something like this, at least fake it outside of our galaxy. At minimum, and then that'll buy you a couple thousand years, probably. So,
Fucking amateurs.
fucking amateurs. So, anything else you want to say about Valiant Thor, Pato?
No.
Do you guys believe in the story of Valiant Thor? If you do, let me know. Bring to me your information, because to be quite honest with you, as much as I'm vaguely familiar with the concept, I mean, this is the first time I'm really digging into it. So maybe I'm missing something. I'm open. Change my mind. Call 773-59-WEIRD and change my mind. But
And leave her a voicemail congratulating her for her inclusion in Feminine Macabre Volume 5.
oh, please, and thank you. I'll be here all week. Or rather, I'll be back here next week when we do another show. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.